There is something in your home right now that you walk past every single day, that you invited in with your own hands, and it is quietly affecting the peace, the atmosphere, and the spiritual climate of your entire household. Today, I want to show you something most Christians never think about, because there are doors we open in our own homes without ever realizing we open them, and some of them should have stayed shut. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly which ones to close. Ephesians 4:27 gives a short but sobering command, and do not give the devil a foothold. Notice the word foothold, not a stronghold, not a throne. A foothold, a small place, a crack in the door. The enemy does not need you to hand him the whole house. He only needs a place to put his foot so the door cannot close again. Your home is not just walls and furniture, it is a spiritual environment. And everything you allow into it either guards it or quietly erodes it. Today, we are going to talk about 6 doors you may have opened without ever knowing they were doors. Door 1, what you allow onto your screens. This is the door you open more often than any other, and the one you defend the hardest. I am not here to hand you a list of rules about what you can and cannot watch. That is between you and God. But think honestly about something. The images, the words, the spirit of what streams into your living room hour after. It shapes the atmosphere of the room and the appetite of the heart. I remember a family who could not understand why their children had become so anxious, so restless, so quick to fear, and when they finally paid attention, they realized the household had been feeding on a constant diet of violence, dread, and darkness through the screen every night. Nobody invited fear into that home directly, but they had left a door open, and fear walked in through it. Philippians 4:8 gives the filter. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Notice the word think. Paul is not only talking about entertainment, he is talking about what you allow to occupy the space of your mind, and your screen is the widest gate into that space that has ever existed. You would never let a stranger stand in your living room whispering fear and filth to your children. But a screen can do it for, and we call it relaxing. Guard what plays on the walls of your home. The eyes are a door, and everything that enters through them stays longer than you think. Door 2, the objects you keep out of sentiment. This is the door that hides inside your good memories. Every home collects objects, gifts, souvenirs, inherited items, things received from people we love. Most are completely innocent, but some carry a history or an origin that has nothing to do with God. And we keep them anyway, not because we honor what they represent, but because we cannot bear to let them go. I knew a believer who kept an object for years that had been given to her by someone deeply involved in practices that opposed her faith. She did not believe in what it stood for. She told herself it was just decoration, but every time her eyes fell on it, a heaviness she could not explain returned, and it was not until she finally removed it that she realized how long it had been sitting in the middle of her peace. When the people of Ephesus turned to God, those who had practiced sorcery brought their scrolls together and burned them publicly, even though the value was enormous. Notice what they did. They did not sell them. They did not store them in an attic. They did not keep them for sentiment. They destroyed them because they understood that some things cannot share a roof with a life surrendered to God. Sentiment is not a good enough reason to give something permanent access to your home. Not every object you love is an object that loves you back. Door 3, the words spoken repeatedly inside your walls. This is the door most families never think of as a door at all. The atmosphere of a home is built far more by words than by furniture, and in many houses, the same destructive words are repeated day after day until they become the very air the family breathes. This family is cursed. Nothing ever goes right for us. You are just like your father. These are not harmless expressions of frustration. They are declarations, and they shape the spiritual climate of the home more powerfully than any object ever could. I once sat with a family where the same phrase had been spoken over a child for years, that he would never amount to anything, and by the time he was grown, he believed it so completely that he had stopped trying to prove it wrong. The words had done their work quietly, patiently, and permanently. Proverbs 18:21 says it plainly, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit." Notice that word fruit. Words are seeds, and a home is soil. Whatever you plant in a house through repetition will eventually grow, and your family will eat what you have planted, whether it is life or death. Watch the words that echo through your rooms. A home does not become heavy all at once. It is spoken into heaviness, one careless sentence at a time. If this message is already making you look around your own home differently, brother, sister, please subscribe to this channel and write in the comments, "Lord, help me guard the atmosphere of my home." Now, let us continue, because the next three doors are the ones the enemy hides best. Door 4, the unresolved conflict you refuse to settle. This is the door that stays open every night. You go to sleep angry. Every home carries tension from time to time. The problem is when conflict is never resolved, when bitterness is allowed to take a permanent room, when family members live under the same roof with walls of silence between them, that tension does not stay neutral. It becomes an opening. I have seen homes where the arguments never truly ended. They just paused, waiting to resume, where resentment was passed down like an inheritance, and no one could remember what the original wound even was. And the strange heaviness in those homes was not random. It was the accumulated weight of conflict, never brought to the cross. Ephesians 4:26 and 27 places these two ideas side by side on purpose. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. Notice how close those two commands sit. Unresolved anger and a foothold for the enemy in the same breath, because they are connected. The anger we refuse to settle becomes the exact crack the enemy uses to enter. Do not let the sun set on a house full of silence, because unforgiveness left overnight does not rest. It builds, and by morning it has moved in a little deeper. Door 5, what you invite in through the people you welcome. This is the door that walks in on 2 feet and sits down at your table. We are absolutely called to be hospitable. We are called to open our homes to love people, to welcome the stranger and feed the hungry. I am not talking about that. I am talking about something more specific. There are times we give certain people deep, ongoing access to our families, people whose influence is quietly steering our household away from God, and we allow it because confronting it feels unkind. I remember a couple who could not understand why their home had grown so tense, so divided, so full of quiet conflict, and when they honestly examined it, they realized a particular influence they kept welcoming and carried strife, gossip, and division everywhere it went. They were not being invaded. They were opening the door themselves, again and again. 1 Corinthians 15:33 gives a warning that applies to households as much as to individuals. Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. Notice, it does not say bad company might corrupt. It says it does. Influence is not neutral, and the people with regular access to your home are shaping it whether you notice or not. Be hospitable to everyone, but be intimate with few. An open home is a blessing, but an undiscerning one is an unguarded gate. Door 6, the prayerlessness that leaves the house uncovered. This is the door that opens not by what you bring in, but by what you fail to do. This is the most overlooked door of all, because it is not an object, a word, or a person. It is an absence. A home that is never prayed over, never dedicated to God, never covered by a daily acknowledgement of His presence is not a neutral home. It is an unguarded one, and whatever is not surrendered to God is quietly left exposed. I have been in homes where you could feel the presence of God the moment you walked in, not because the family was perfect, but because that home was prayed in, worshiped in. And I have been in homes where none of that ever happened, where God was never invited into the ordinary rhythm of the household, and the difference was impossible to miss. Psalm 127:1 says, "Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain." Notice the two roles the Lord builds and the Lord watches. You can lock every physical door in your house and still leave the most important one wide open. Because the only true covering over a home is the presence of God Himself. A house without prayer is not empty. It is simply available, and something always fills what God has not been invited to fill. I want to say something important before we close, and I need you to hear it clearly. This message is not meant to fill you with fear or make you suspicious of every object, every guest, and every quiet evening in your home. Fear is not the goal, and fear is not from God. A believer walking with the Lord does not need to live in dread of the enemy. Because greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. But there is a difference between living in fear and living with discernment. God is not asking you to be afraid of your home. He is asking you to be intentional about it, to notice what you have allowed in, to close the doors that should never have been opened, and to invite his presence into every room. Ephesians 4:27 told us not to give the devil a foothold, and the beautiful truth is that every foothold can be removed. Every home can be reclaimed the moment its owner decides to guard it under God. So walk through your home this week, not with fear, but with open eyes. Ask God to show you what you have stopped seeing, close the doors that need closing. Then dedicate every room, every relationship, and every screen to Him, because your home was never meant to be a place the enemy could quietly occupy. It was meant to be a sanctuary, and a sanctuary is not a house that no darkness ever approaches. It is a house surrendered, room by room, to the light. If this message has opened your eyes today, I want you to do one thing right now. Write in the comments, "Lord, I dedicate my home to you." That is a simple sentence, but it is a powerful act of surrender, and God hears every word of it. And if you know someone whose home has felt heavy, restless, or divided, share this video with them today. It could be the word that helps them finally close a day. Do not forget to subscribe to this channel so we can keep growing together in biblical wisdom every single week. God bless you deeply, my brother, my sister. Until next time.